Hello everyone, good evening. Welcome to today's session. I hope there is no audio and video issues. All right. So in the previous class we had started with the Ancient India series and we have covered very basic introduction into the Ancient India. So today also we are continuing with the same, just looking into the Stone Age period. All right, we will be seeing about the Paleolithic, Mesolithic and Neolithic period up till the beginning of Harappan civilization. So unlike other classes, today's class will be comparatively shorter. Okay, it won't go for 2 hours. It will be over way before that. Because I did not want to club Harappan civilization into this one. Harappan civilization is a big chapter and it needs proper explanation. So I'm not going to club it together with this one. I will take that in the next class along with Aryans. All right. So today we will be looking into the Stone Age period up to the beginning of Harappan civilization. We will be also briefly looking into the Chalcolithic period or the Chalcolithic period, however you want to pronounce it. And as far as this period is concerned, the Chalcolithic period actually, existed even after Harappan civilization, but still it was not as advanced as Harappa. Okay, so we will be looking into that as well, bypassing the Harappan civilization completely. And yeah, we will end by looking into the limitations and significance of all these different eras of Stone Age. Okay, so welcome to Madhav Sankar classes. I am Madhav Sankar Warrier. We are looking into the second lecture in the UPSc CSC series of Old NCERT Ancient India R.S. Sharma textbook. Okay, so the first chapter, there are two chapters that I'm going to take today. One is the Stone Age. Second one is the Chalcolithic period. So first chapter, the Stone Age. So before we begin, let me just tell you if there is any kind of technical issues that happen in between the class, please stay on. There is a good chance that internet connection might get interrupted, but I have backups, so be patient. It will immediately reconnect. And also, if you are a new listener to my series, please, you can always ask questions on the live chat. I will be looking into the live chat occasionally. Okay, I won't be looking into it all the time, but once in like 3-4 slides, I will look into the questions in the live chat and then get back to you. Okay, so even if I did not reply to your question immediately, please be patient and wait for it. Okay, I won't miss any questions. I will definitely get back to you. So let's start with the Stone Age. Okay, I mean, before we begin, you have to understand that as far as UPSC is concerned, we are looking into the Indian history. Okay, history of ancient India. So that does not mean that all the things that happened, like they say the Stone Age or the Mesolithic Age or the Neolithic Age, everything is confined to India. No. Okay, our interest or our focus is on the Indian counterpart of all these periods. But this has been happening throughout the world. There has been phenomenons of the same character across the world in different times. Okay, so for example, Mesolithic period started in the world at a particular time, but in India it came comparatively later. So it is not simultaneous event. Okay, so as far as we are concerned, we are looking into Indian aspects of all the Stone Age period. So Stone Age period can be classified into three. So before that, what is Stone Age? Very simple in layman's terms, Stone Age means a period when man began to use stone tools and began to use stones for various purposes as tools, as weapons, as substances to create shelter, etc., etc. That is in the layman's definition words. That is the definition. Okay, so we are going to see a period in which stones were predominantly used as the main articles or tools by human beings. Again, you have to understand we are looking in the perspective of human beings because stones has been there always. Okay, the earth was born billions of years ago, and even from that time there has been stones and rocks in this world. Okay, but right now we are interested in studying about these stones and all because human beings started using them as weapons. So we are looking into this through the eyes of human beings. Okay, so broadly, Stone Age can be classified into three, that is Paleolithic, Mesolithic, and Neolithic. Paleolithic, paleo means ancient, okay, or old. So lithic means stone. So Paleolithic means old stone. Okay, Old Stone Age. Similarly, Meso means middle, then Lithic means stone. So Mesolithic means middle Stone Age. And Neo means new, so Neolithic means new Stone Age. Okay, I hope that is very clear to you. I know that most of you already know all these things. I'm just telling all these things if in case you are very new to history and you are not aware of these terms and all. That's it. Okay, so within the Paleolithic age itself, or within the Old Stone Age itself, it can be classified into different subsegments. Okay, that is Lower Paleolithic or Early Paleolithic, then Middle Paleolithic, and Upper Paleolithic. Okay, so once again, the entire Stone Age is divided into three. One is Paleo, second one is Meso, and third one is Neo. And again, there are subclassifications for all these, but today we are looking into the subclassifications of Paleolithic. That is, within Paleolithic, we have lower, we have middle, and we have upper. Okay, so a very brief idea about the period is also shown here. The early or the lower Paleolithic period extends from 600,000 years ago in BC to 150,000 years BC. This is the rough estimated period of early or lower Paleolithic period. Then comes middle Paleolithic period, that is roughly between 150,000 BC to 35,000 BC. And finally, the upper Paleolithic period between 35,000 BC to 10,000 BC. So the entire Paleolithic period extends between 600,000 BC to 10,000 BC. Clear? And if you look at these years very closely, you don't have to study the exact years or anything. Okay, just have a rough idea, that's all. If you look at these years very closely, you will understand that of the three, the early or the lower Paleolithic period has been the longest. Correct, right? 600,000 minus 150,000 is like 450,000 years has been early or lower Paleolithic period. Middle Paleolithic period is roughly, comparatively shorter, and upper Paleolithic period is the shortest. Okay, but we have much more info and we have much more knowledge about upper Paleolithic age compared to the other ages. Why? Obvious reasons, because it is closer to our recent time period. Okay, so this is that period that we are going to see in the first part of today's session. Clear? So as I have mentioned earlier, we are looking at in the perspective of India. That does not mean all these started in India and the world at the same time. For example, the early Old Stone Age or the lower Paleolithic period. This actually covers the greater part of our Ice Age. I hope you know what Ice Age is. I mean, I'm sure you have all watched the movie Ice Age. Okay, basically it is a period in which majority of the globe was covered with ice. Okay, there has been severe climatic changes afterwards, but at some point of time, major chunk of Earth was under ice. Okay, and most of the early Stone Age or most of this lower Paleolithic period has been in the Ice Age time. And it began in Africa around 2 million years ago. See, it began in Africa like 2 million years ago, but in India, we find evidences of lower Paleolithic age only around 600,000 years. Here we have written it 600,000 to 150,000 BC. So in India, it began like 1.4 million years later, but it had started somewhere else in the world way back. Okay, so this is not called simultaneous or parallel, something that happens parallelly all over the world. This is some very important in history. For example, when we look at history, okay, in a broader sense, we talk about ancient history, medieval history, modern history, right? So in India, we know that ancient India is up to this portion. Medieval India starts from, say, the Sultanate period and so on. And finally, the modern India starts somewhere when the Europeans arrive in the country. But there is something called ancient history, medieval history, and modern history for the world also. So in a world perspective, the years are entirely different. Okay, so I hope you are getting my point. We can't exactly compare the different timelines between India and the whole world. It may not always coincide. Okay, so early Stone Age or the old Stone Age uh, in India has been represented, or say if we are looking, or if a historian or an archaeologist is actually studying about this old Stone Age, there are certain things that he or she looks for. Okay, and obviously the most important thing is the stone tools, particular type of stone tools that could have the characteristics of a old Stone Age. So while archaeologists study all these things, most of the tools that came across their way are hand axes, cleavers, and choppers. Okay, and all these tools from this old Paleolithic age has been found in a very specific area known as Bori in Maharashtra. Bori in Maharashtra is actually the earliest site in India as far as lower Paleolithic age is concerned. Okay, we have the first or the oldest evidences of this lower Paleolithic age from this site called Bori in Maharashtra. That means we have evidences of tools from 600,000 years ago from Bori in Maharashtra. That is the oldest or the first estimate of early Paleolithic period in India. Okay, there are other sites also. For example, early Stone Age has been found in, say, Valley of River Son or the Sohan in Punjab. Then we have evidences of that in Kashmir, Thar Desert, Belan Valley in Uttar Pradesh, then in deserts area of Dithwana, etc. etc. There are plenty of sites. So as a UPSC candidate, you should be able to identify a particular site and match it with what kind of site it is. Clear? Is it a Neolithic site? Is it a Paleolithic site? Is it a Mesolithic site? It is. So read the textbook. In the textbook, all the sites are listed, and so please by heart which site belong to what age. And if you are a history optional student, please understand that there is a 50-mark question in mapping. Okay, so in the maps, you will be given a clue, okay, one line or a two-line clue regarding a particular site. And that site will obviously be marked in the map, and you have to identify that site. What is the name of that site? So there also some of the clues will be it is a Neolithic site. And there will be a dot in some part in, say, Punjab. Or say the option clue will be it is a Paleolithic site, and there will be a spot somewhere close to the Punjab region or in the Rajasthan region. Then you should be able to identify that it is Sohan Valley, or maybe it is Dithwana. Clear? So it is easy pickings, 50 marks question as far as history optional paper 1 is concerned. Anyway, moving on. So as far as Didwana is concerned, this is a very peculiar site. Okay, Didwana in Rajasthan is a very particular site. Why? Because here we come across all the three periods. We come across stone tools corresponding to all the three periods, that is lower Paleolithic, middle Paleolithic, and upper Paleolithic age. Everything can be seen in Didwana region in Rajasthan. Very important. Okay, today's class is going to be a bit dry because we are going to analyze these kinds of various sites and all, and we will be looking into the kind of tools, the way or the method in which the people lived, etc. etc. Okay, the real story or the real pace starts only from Harappa. These are the basis, basic classes. Okay, so bear with me. Today's class will be comparatively shorter, as I have mentioned at the beginning. So we will quickly finish this, and in the next class we will start with Harappa. So another site very interesting is in Chirki Nevasa, which is in Maharashtra. Nagarjunakonda in Andhra Pradesh. Bhimbetka near Bhopal. All these are examples of Paleolithic sites. Alright, Chirki Nevasa in which state? Very important, Maharashtra. Nagarjunakonda in Andhra Pradesh. So Neolithic, Chalcolithic, Paleolithic, so whenever you study about these sites, understand the location of these sites. I'm not talking about the particular state or as such, but has it been concentrated in one portion of India or not? Okay, if you look at here, you will see that one site is in Maharashtra, one is in Andhra Pradesh, another one is in Madhya Pradesh. Earlier we saw a site in Punjab, then on Rajasthan. So it has been spread throughout India, North India, Central India, South India. Okay, it's not like concentrated towards the northwest of India as the Harappan civilization happens. Clear? So we are talking about a very, long time ago. Okay, there is nothing called agriculture or anything at that time. So how did the people during this time survive in the early Stone Age? How did the people survive? So people obviously wanted food. Okay, without food they can't survive. So they used to be food gatherers. Okay, that is the only method. I mean, they do not know the art of cultivation. Their agriculture is unknown to them. So they basically use the forest products. Okay, they collect food gatherers. And at some point of time, once they manage to perfect certain weapons out of the stone, etc., etc., they began to hunt also. Eventually, they also started fishing and started capturing birds, etc., etc. And this is how the population during that time survived. There is no agriculture. They were basically food gatherers, resorted to hunting, fishing, capturing birds, etc., etc. in the early or the lower Paleolithic period. Then comes the middle Paleolithic period. So in middle Paleolithic period, there are certain curious things that we find. And the most important one is small pieces of stones. Okay, rather than large, very irregular kinds of weapons and tools, we come across comparatively smaller pieces of very sharpened pieces of stones and all. Blades are there, bows are there, scrapers are there. And we find this middle Paleolithic sites in, say, around River Narmada, south of the Tungabhadra River, Bailan Valley in Uttar Pradesh, etc., etc. Okay, there are much more number of sites are there. Please read it from the textbook. Okay, so this is the middle Paleolithic site. The most important point being occurrence of small pieces of stones, which were eventually used as weapons and extra tools and all. Then comes Upper Paleolithic phase. Upper Paleolithic, I mean, we find around 566 sites in India that is dealing with Upper Paleolithic site. So by the time of Upper Paleolithic site, just think about it. I have given you a rough period. Okay, the year is given here. So it started from 600,000 years ago, and Upper Paleolithic age starts like 35,000 years ago. Okay, so a lot of years has passed. Okay, around 565,000 years have passed since the beginning of Lower Paleolithic period. So during this time period, the climate of Earth also changed significantly. Earlier, I told you that most of the lower Paleolithic age were simultaneous with the Ice Age. Okay, so by this time, by the time of Upper Paleolithic age, the Ice Age has gone away and the climate has started to warm up. It means it has become much more suited for life. Clear? I mean, just think about it. If it is completely filled with ice and snow, it doesn't support life as much. But once it gets warmer and warmer, it starts to support more and more life and diversity. Clear? So climate play a very important role in the history of mankind. And it is in this period, in the Upper Paleolithic period, that we actually see the appearance of new flint industries and men of the modern type. Okay, that is the Homo sapiens sapiens. Okay, I hope you know about different, periods of evolution of man. Okay, I think all of you have heard about Neanderthals, then Homo erectus, Homo sapiens, Homo sapiens sapiens. Okay, the current version, okay, we are, okay, I mean, the final evolution of human being so far is the modern man, that is Homo sapiens sapiens. Two sapiens are there. Okay, they became Homo erectus, then Homo sapiens, and finally Homo sapiens sapiens. So that happened in the Upper Paleolithic period. Clear? So in this period, man began to live in caves and rock shelters, etc., etc. And we have found evidence of all these in Bhimbetka. All right. In the next, in one of the upcoming chapters, we will also study about the very famous Bhimbetka cave paintings and all. At that time also, we will see cave paintings in Bhimbetka ranges from Upper Paleolithic age to Mesolithic age. So Bhimbetka is a typical example of Upper Paleolithic age as well. Okay, lower also, but painting starts from upper. Then another example, an Upper Paleolithic assemblage characterized by comparatively large flakes, blades, burins, scrapers, etc. has been found in Gujarat also. Clear? So again, in different parts of the country, we find sites that deals with all these things. It has nothing to do with Indus Valley civilization, or it has nothing to do with anything organized as that. But we find evidences of these kinds of sites here and there. So it means that human beings, or the modern man, that is Homo sapiens sapiens, had lived in all these parts of the country in these time periods. Clear? So now we come to the late Stone Age, or let's say Mesolithic period. Okay, the middle area, the middle Stone Age, Mesolithic. So Upper Paleolithic age came to an end at the end of the Ice Age around 10,000 BC. Okay, finally the Ice Age, which was very prevalent back then, finally lowered and lowered, and world climate began to become warmer and warmer. And at a particular point of time, the Ice Age ended, and with that, the Upper Paleolithic age also came to an end. Okay, and then once the warming up activity continued, it started to warm up very significantly, and it led to changes in fauna and flora. So this transitional period from Upper Paleolithic period or the Paleolithic period to the Neolithic period, which we will be studying in the next slide, this transition period is known as Mesolithic period. Clear? So Mesolithic period is nothing but the transitional period between Paleolithic age and Neolithic age. In this age also, human beings were hunter-gatherers, and they focused on hunting, fishing, and food gathering. But towards the end of this period, that is in a later stage of Mesolithic period, we find that human beings started domestication of animals. That is a very important point. Domestication of animals started in the late Stone Age, or say towards the end of Mesolithic period. Clear? So Mesolithic age marked a transitional phase in the mode of subsistence leading to animal husbandry. Very important point for your prelims. And what is the another very important point regarding Mesolithic period? That is the arrival of microliths. Earlier also we saw in the middle Paleolithic period, we find some small sharp focused stones. But clearly the microliths is a typical feature of Mesolithic period. Okay, we come across, earlier it was only a few, okay, here and there we come across a few number of stones. But now in the later phase of Mesolithic period, we have abundance of microliths. So microliths are a typical feature of Mesolithic period. Okay, it is a characteristic feature of Mesolithic period. Examples of sites excavated includes Bagor in Rajasthan, Adamgarh in Madhya Pradesh, etc. etc. So from Adamgarh in Madhya Pradesh and Bagor in Rajasthan, we come across the earliest evidence of domestication of animals in the Indian part of our subcontinent. Okay, our subcontinent includes 5 countries: India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Bhutan. So out of all these 5 countries, in the Indian part of this subcontinent, Sri Lanka is also there. So in the Indian part of this subcontinent, the earliest evidence of domestication of animals is obtained from 2 sites, Adamgarh in Madhya Pradesh and Bagor in Rajasthan. Clear? So historians and archaeologists, after their studies and all, came to the conclusion that cultivation of plants started around 7,000 to 6,000 BC in Rajasthan area. Okay, close to the Sambar lake, that is a former saltwater lake. So close to the Sambar lake, there are evidences which show that agriculture, or say a cultivation of plants, started sometime between 6,000 and 7,000 BC. Okay, now after this transitional period comes the New Stone Age, that is the Neolithic period. So in India, the only known Neolithic settlement is attributed to 7000 BC is Megharga. Alright, Neolithic period in a world perspective started earlier than this, but in Indian subcontinent, the earliest Neolithic site would be Mehergarh. The only site that is attributed as a Neolithic site to 7000 BC is Mehergarh. There are other Neolithic sites obviously, but in this time frame, it is only one, that is Mehergarh. And Mehergarh is right now not in India. It is actually in Pakistan now, and it is on the bank of the river Bolan. Okay, in the Kochi plain, which is known as the breadbasket of Baluchistan. You should be able to identify Mehergarh in a map. Very important. We will have to study about the different sites and what are the evidences that we got from these sites, what are the findings from these sites, etc., etc. That is very important for your prelims, but that we will take later. Right now, I'm sticking with the textbook. Okay, so here in the Neolithic age, we have evidences of wheat and barley production, domesticated cattle, sheep, goat, etc., etc. in the initial stage. These were the three animals that we find domesticated in the initial stage. Wheat and barley were the prominent crops. Okay, I told you in the previous slide, cultivation started sometime around in the end of Mesolithic period. And by the Neolithic times, we have evidences of wheat, barley, and other such kinds of crops. We have also evidences of granaries. Okay, granaries, I mean, not the Harappan type or anything, but granaries that were made of mud bricks, which were also used for constructing dwellings. And as time went on, by the period of 4500 BC, potter's wheel was also known to man. Okay, pottery also came into the picture by 4500 BC. So people in the Neolithic age, they continued their evolution from the previous periods. So they began to even more polish on their skills and all. So in the tools also, this evolution was very visible. Neolithic tools were mostly polished stone, implements of polished stone. It is not crude or anything. Just look at the pictures, okay? You can see the Paleolithic stones here. Paleolithic tools here. It is very crude and all. There is no definite shape. There is no polishing. It is very rough. And then if you look at the Mesolithic stones, you will see that it is smaller in size. It is microlith. Okay, comparatively smaller in size and comparatively a better shape also. By the time of the Neolithic age, the stones are or the tools are comparatively very much polished. You can see the rounded edges and all now, and there are certain very sharp and sharp edge and polished body and all. So it means as time went on, man began to evolve in all these areas. They learned the art of making more polished and more sophisticated tools and weapons. So based on the type of axes, okay, axe is one of the most common tools that we find in the early period. And based on the type of axes, Neolithic shelters can be classified into three. Okay, Neolithic settlements can be classified into three based on the type of axes we find there. One is northwestern, second one is northeastern, and the third one is southern. So northwest of India, northeast of India, and then something that is south of India, the southern India. So what are the differences between these three? Based on the type of axis, northwestern group was distinguished by rectangular axis with a curved cutting edge. Okay, so if it is an axe that has a rectangular portion with a curved cutting edge, then usually mostly it belongs to northwestern type. Then in the northeastern group, we have polished stone axes with a rectangular butt and occasional shouldered hose. And in the southern group, the axes are with oval sides and pointed butt. Okay, all these are Neolithic shelters. But in different parts of Indian subcontinent, there are different characters to the same time period. Clear? I mean, in the medieval India and modern India, we studied that there are many regional differences. right? We studied about different emergence of regional language, regional cultures, etc., etc. So here also we find that based on the region, there are differences in the kind of tools and the kind of lifestyle that was led by people even during those times. There is certain things that is common to all, and at the same time there are many things that is specific to various kinds of regions. So this is a map given in your NCERT textbook which shows the Neolithic cultures. You can look into them and you can identify various areas from this. Here is Meherga. Okay, we talked about Meherga. It is situated here in Pakistan, modern day Pakistan. All right, there are plenty of other sites also. We have Nagarjunakonda here. Okay, we can see many sites are given here. Payyamballi is here, given here. Tekkalakota is given here. Okay, please go through them and be ready to identify these places, especially if you are a history optional student. Then out of all these sites, we have to be very focused on a couple of them, which is actually one in Jammu Kashmir and the other one in Bihar. That is Burra Home and Shirant. Okay, these are very favorite sites for UPSC also. UPSC loves Burra Home for some reason, and we find questions regarding it in various mock series as well. Okay, so Kashmiri Neolithic culture had its own different characteristics. Okay, its own features. Clear? And it can be distinguished from the rest of the cultures by its dwelling and the complete absence of microliths. Very important. We do not find microliths in Kashmiri Neolithic cultures. Microliths started from middle Stone Age itself. Okay, and it continued in the Neolithic period as well. But in Kashmiri Neolithic sites, we do not come across any evidence of microliths. It's a very peculiar feature of Kashmir. One of the most important sites here is Burra Home, which actually means the place of birch. Okay, birch is a kind of tree. Okay, it's a particular variety of tree. So Burra Home, actually the literal meaning of the word is the place of birch. And here we find some very interesting features. People here lived in pits. Okay, near to lakes, they actually dug pits and they lived in these pits. So pit dwelling is a feature of Burra. Clear? And obviously, I mean, the archaeologists and historians believe that they were probably, a hunting and fishing economy, and they also seem to have been acquainted with agriculture. Yeah, I mean, Neolithic, by the time the New Stone Age happened, people were acquainted with agriculture. Another very important site in Kashmir is Gufkral. Gufkral literally translates to the cave of Potter. Okay, here also we find evidences of agriculture and animal husbandry. But the curious thing in this place, Gufkral, is that along with the stone tools, along with the polished stone tools, that is a feature of Neolithic sites, we also find tools made of bones. The only other place in India that has yielded considerable bone implements is Shirant, which is located in Bihar. Okay, we find stone tools in many sites, but out of all of them, in two of these sites, there are plenty of, we find abundance of stone tools. One is Gufkral in Jammu Kashmir, and the other one is Shirant, which is situated in the northern side of River Ganga in the modern day state of Bihar. And in this area, in Shirant, the bone tools are actually made of antlers taken from deers and all. Okay, antlers, or that kind of horns that deers have, it is used for creating bone tools. In Bursa, people used to use grey pottery. Okay, it is not red pottery, it's not black polished ware or northern black polished ware or anything. It is grey pottery. Coarse grey pottery has been found in Bursa. Domestic dogs were found buried with their masters in their graves. So dog burial is another characteristics of Bursa. Along with their masters, their dogs were also buried, and we find evidences. Why? Because we find skeletons of human beings and dogs buried in the same pit. Okay, so pit dwelling, dog burial. This is so if these are the clues, then you can be very sure that it is Burzahom that we are speaking about. So just like Kashmir or just like Chirand, we also find some sites in other parts of the country. For example, we have Neolithic tools that has been found in the Garo Hills in Meghalaya. So a site in northeastern India has characteristics of a Neolithic site. Then we have Neolithic sites such as Koldihwa and Mahagra in Allahabad district, which are known for the cultivation of rice in the 5th millennium BC. Okay, Koldihwa and Mahagra in Allahabad district, that is in Uttar Pradesh. Here we find evidences of rice cultivation as far ago as 5th millennium BC. Okay, these are prelims points. Just study them and move on. There is no story to it. These are individual points, so it might appear a bit dry to you. Okay, now Neolithic settlements in the south. Okay, we looked into Kashmir. We looked into a site in northeast and North India and all. So now coming to South India. In South India, most of these sites are concentrated south of River Godavari. River Godavari is the biggest river in South India, and beneath Godavari, okay, south of Godavari, we come across lots of Neolithic settlements. Here, we also find fire-baked earthen figurines, which suggest that a large number of cattle besides sheep and goats were kept. Okay, we find across many fire-baked earthen figurines, okay, made of clay or say mud. Okay, we find such earthen figurines, which suggests that apart from keeping a say cattle and all, we also have sheep, goat, etc. etc. So domestication of animals was very much there in South Indian Neolithic sites also. That's what we are trying to say. Then stone querns were found. These were actually used to grind corn. Okay, stone querns. I mean, if a stone quern is found at some place, it obviously means the process of grinding has to happen. Okay, grinding what? Grinding cereals. Which means what? South Indian Neolithic sites knew the art of producing cereals. This is how historians connect the dots. I mean, the cereals and the plants of cereals, they have gone disintegrated a long time ago, right? They would have degraded a long time ago and it's gone forever. But then we come across a grinding stone. From that, we can understand that they used to grind cereals. If they have grinded cereals, then it also means they knew how to produce cereals. Okay, so in South India, some of the very famous Neolithic sites include Maski, Brahmagiri, Hallur, Kodaikal, Sanganakallu, Piklikal, Takkalakota, all in Karnataka. Then Payamballi in Tamil Nadu, Utnur in Andhra Pradesh. Just again, I am repeating, if you are a history optional, make sure you can map each and every one of these sites in a map. If you are not a history optional student, then at least have an idea on which site is located in which state. Okay, so Karnataka has a lot of them. Tamil Nadu has Payamballi, some more sites are there given in your textbook. Then you have this Utnur, a very famous site in Andhra Pradesh. And as far as Piklikal in Karnataka is concerned, here we have evidences of cattle herders. Also, we have ash mounds and habitation sites exclusive to this site. So during those days, people were not settled down forever. I mean, they knew the art of agriculture and cultivation of cereals, that is true, but they will live in a particular place for a long time and then they will abandon that place and go to somewhere else, like the chumbing cultivation. So when they abandon this site, they burn it. Okay, they burn down the whole place and they go to a new site and comes back to the first site only after the first site regains its nutrition and all. Okay, so we find evidences of such huge ash mounds, which was resulted by the burning of the habitation area. And we also come across certain evidences of an actual habitation site that is not yet burned. Both these evidences can be found in Piklikal, a very famous Neolithic site in Karnataka. Now, as far as farming and cereals are concerned, I mean, we are talking about this for a long time, so let's look into it a bit more closer. The Neolithic settlers were the earliest farming communities. Okay, so I told you towards the end of Mesolithic period, we find certain evidences of cultivation, but properly, if in a prelims, if it is asked, say, when do we find the earliest farming communities? It is not Mesolithic, it is actually Neolithic settlers. Neolithic settlers were the earliest farming communities in history of India. They used microlith blades. Microlith blades, it's continued from Mesolithic period. They lived in circular or rectangular houses made of mud and reed. Earlier, they were cave dwellers, but by the time of New Stone Age, they have managed to create mud houses or say reed houses. Okay, so once they started to build their own houses and all, they obviously had some kind of, the concept of property. And historians and archaeologists believe that primitive people living in circular houses owned property in common. Rather than the modern day concept of private property, during those times, the people together, owned a property in common. Okay, we also have evidences of a settled life producing ragi and horse gram. Horse gram is also known as kulati and even rice. Okay, by the time of Neolithic age, we have evidences of all these in the New Stone Age. Then, compared to other Neolithic sites, the Neolithic age or the Neolithic people of Meherga is much, much more advanced. Why? Because in Meherga, there is evidence of beet cultivation, barley cultivation, and also mud brick houses. Okay, wheat and barley are more even modern day crops. Even now we are using all these crops. So in Meherga, we have a comparatively much more advanced Neolithic sites compared to the other sites in India of the contemporary period. Okay, also pottery first appears in this period. I already mentioned this point in the previous slide. Pottery first appeared in Neolithic period. Initially, it was only handmade pottery, and the wheeled pottery came only in a later period. Okay, it began by handmade pottery, but the wheeled pottery that came up later. So Neolithic pottery included black burnished ware, grey ware, and matte impressed ware. These are the three types of Neolithic pottery. What are they? Black burnished ware, grey ware, and matte impressed ware. So what are the progress that man made in Neolithic phase, and what are the limitations of this phase? This is the last slide of this chapter. Okay, so what are the progress and what are the limitations? I already have explained the progress in the previous slide, so this is a summary of that. Neolithic age in the Indian subcontinent began something like 7th millennium BCE. We already know it. Wheat and barley started to be cultivated in Neolithic phase. Use of stone cells which were edged and pointed. So this type of tool began to become more and more advanced. People no longer depended on food gathering. Okay, I mean hunting, fishing, gathering. These activities were still prevalent, but it is not the only thing that people depended on. Because by now people know the art of cultivation and that of cattle husbandry. They also started building dwellings. So these are some of the very curious features of Neolithic period. Now, all these evolution, okay, from the early Paleolithic period, from the cave dwellers or from the wanderers, from the nomadic phase, till becoming a settled agricultural period. This huge evolution is actually a prerequisite or actually a prequel of what is about to come next. So by the time of the end of Neolithic period or by the time of later Neolithic period, man was on the verge of civilization. Okay, man was on the verge of civilization, and we will very soon see that this led to all these evolution eventually culminated in setting up of the first civilization of India, that is Indus Valley civilization. Okay, I mean, to call a society as civilized, it has to have some kind of aspects. Okay, certain criteria has to be achieved in order to gain this tag of a civilization. So all this evolutionary process got human beings up to the threshold of that civilization. So the next step taken by man, the art of writing will take them into a proper civilization. Okay, we will study about that in the next class. But this is another achievement of the evolution of man in the Stone Ages. But obviously, there has been some drawbacks also. So, what are the drawbacks that the Neolithic phase faced? First of all, they had to depend almost entirely on tools and weapons made of stone. They did not have the luxury of using a metal. Okay, using a metal is not very common to the Stone Age period. That is why it is called Stone Age. Okay, we don't call it Metal Age. We call it Stone Age. Why? Because metal is not used by man at this time. So almost all the tools and weapons and everything was made of stone. So there is an inherent disadvantage here. Okay, I mean, you can't clear hardwood trees and you can't clear thick forests with tools and weapons made of stone. You need proper metallic tools in order to cut through such heavy forests. So man had no choice but to live in the foot of hills, hilly areas, and maybe in river valleys, river banks and all. Clear? They cannot go far away from hill foods or hilly areas or from river areas. They had to stay there. This is one of the limitations that was faced by Stone Age people. Another important limitation is that they could not produce more than what is required for subsistence. Okay, despite having all these achievements in the field of agriculture, still agriculture was based on subsistence. They couldn't make surplus, which means they couldn't commercialize agriculture. Okay, so it is agriculture was for bare minimum subsistence. So this is a very brief overview of Stone Age according to the old NCERT textbook. Now comes the stone copper phase. Okay, that is the Chalcolithic settlements. This is we are dealing with only these two chapters today. Tomorrow, day after tomorrow, we will start with Harappan civilization. So Chalcolithic settlements. Okay, good evening, Tamil Selvan. No questions from any of you so far. So I hope you are understanding it. I know that this is a bit boring. It is boring for me also. But you need to have this base to, I mean, you need to know what was there before Harappa, right? Everybody knows a lot of things about Indus Valley and Harappa. But before such a wonderful civilization came into being, how did man reach that civilization? That is this chapter. Okay, this is the prequel of Harappan civilization. Anyway, Chalcolithic Harappan, I won't say Harappan civilization, I mean Indus Valley civilization or Harappan culture. Okay, so Chalcolithic settlements. So some people call this Chalcolithic, some people call it Chalcolithic, whatever it is, doesn't matter. So as far as Chalcolithic settlements are concerned, the end of Neolithic period saw the use of metals. Okay, I mean that progress of evolution. Finally, at some point of time, man started using metals. And the first metal that was used by man is copper. Okay, and that is why this period is known as Chalcolithic period or Copper Stone Age. Chalco means copper, lithic means stone. So Chalcolithic is Copper Stone Age. And copper is actually known in ancient scripts as Is, Ayas. And since it is the first metal used by man, it is considered as sacred in Hinduism. And if you remember in the previous class also I mentioned this, most of the ceremonial vessels and all things are actually made of copper. Why? It is considered as highly pure metal. Again, why? Because it is the first metal used by man, copper. Okay, so extra information, Is is copper and Shyama Is is iron. Is is copper, Shyama is iron. Okay, so basically Chalcolithic period is actually a pre-Harappan phase. Okay, however, in various parts of India, the Chalcolithic cultures followed the Bronze Age Harappan culture. Okay, in theory, technologically, Chalcolithic settlements or Chalcolithic phase should have been a pre-Harappan phase based on the technological advancement and the social progress, etc., etc. But for some weird reason, Chalcolithic period actually followed the Bronze Age. Okay, there is, I mean, if you have read some of the history textbooks, you would have went through a particular line that says, after the decline of Harappan civilization, there hasn't been anything of such a level for about a period of 600 to 1000 years. Okay, there has been a gap of civilization in India, in Indian history. We do not come across that level of a society for a very long time since the decline of Harappan civilization. This is the curious thing. Some of these Chalcolithic settlements actually happened after Harappa. But even then, these were not even close to the level of advancement achieved by Harappan civilization. Plenty of reasons are there, but that we will study later on. Okay, so mostly, they used stone and copper objects, but they occasionally also used low-grade bronze and even iron. Very important. Harappans did not know the use of iron, but Chalcolithic people actually used iron also. I mean, in a small quantity only, but still they knew iron. Okay, so this society, this Chalcolithic society, was actually primarily a rural society. And some of the best examples are there in southeastern Rajasthan, a place called Ahar, and another at Gilund. Both these sites has been excavated by historians and they came across evidences of Chalcolithic settlements. Okay, and they lie in the dry zones of the Banas Valley. So these are examples of Chalcolithic settlements, Ahar and Gilund, both in Rajasthan. In the western Madhya Pradesh or the Malwa region, also we come across some examples in Kayatsta and Iran. All these are Chalcolithic settlements. And the Malwa ware is actually a typical ceramic pottery that is seen in the Malwa region. Okay, it belongs to the Chalcolithic period, and Malwa ware is considered as the richest among the Chalcolithic ceramics. Okay, and there are plenty of other Chalcolithic sites also in India. For example, Jore, Nevasa, Daimabad. Earlier I told you, Daimabad, we came across another site, I hope you remember, which is an example for three periods, Paleolithic, Neolithic, Mesolithic and Neolithic. Daimabad is another very peculiar site, the importance of which we will study in the upcoming slide. Okay, so we just understand that Daimabad is very important for UPSC. So is Jore. These two are very important sites. Please keep them in mind. Both of them are situated in Maharashtra. Okay, then other sites include Chandoli, Songaon, Imangaon. Okay, all these again in Maharashtra. Then you have, say, the thing that is common to all these sites is that they are all named after the type site. Okay, at one particular type site. And this type site is actually Jore. I know that you did not understand what I meant. I will explain it again. In Maharashtra region, we come across all these different sites. Okay, and there is a commonality between all these sites, among all these sites. Clear? Among all these sites, we come across something in common. All right, so you have to call it using a particular name. Clear? For example, say in Harappan civilization, we come across Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Lothal, but still we call it the Indus Valley civilization sites. Okay, everything. Or we call it the Harappan sites. Why? Because Harappa is the first site that has been excavated or found. Similarly, here, the first among all these sites that was excavated or studied by archaeologists is actually Jore. Okay, Jorve. Jorve in Maharashtra is the first thing that has been found and studied. Due to this reason, this entire culture came to be known as Jorve culture. Okay, Jorve culture. And this is what is type site means. Type site means the primary site based on which other sites are compared. Okay, Harappa is the type site for Indus Valley civilization. Similarly, Jorve is the type site for the Jorve culture, the first site that is excavated, and historians make this the standard. Alright, so this area, Jorve, is actually situated on the bank of Pravara river, which is actually a tributary of Godavari. Jorve culture was actually a rural culture, and some of its settlements, such as Daimabad and Inamgaon had almost reached urban stage. Okay, again remember Indus Valley was an urban organization, an urban setup, but Jorve culture is rural. But two of the very prominent areas in the Jorve culture, that is Daimabad and Inamgaon, are actually very close to achieving the status of urban stage. Chalcolithic people used tiny tools and weapons made of stone, which the stone blades and bracelets were very important element. Okay, I mean the stones still continued. Don't think that just because they discovered metal, they completely abandoned stones. No, stone utensils and metals, stone weapons, etc., were still very prevalent in Chalcolithic period. And unlike other contemporary Chalcolithic farming cultures, one region, Ahar, does not have any monolithic tools. Ahar in Rajasthan, again, is an example of a Chalcolithic site, but it does not have any evidence of microliths. Earlier, we saw another site in Jammu Kashmir where we do not come across any microliths. I hope you remember. Okay, it's a bit confusing, but just for now, just listen to what I'm saying. And once I upload the PDF, go through the PDF and study it, read it once more. Then all these things will be very clear to you. All right. So now let's see the major aspects of Chalcolithic cultures. So this area in Rajasthan called as Ahar. Ahar practiced smelting and metallurgy from the very outset. So if a culture is practicing smelting and metallurgy, it is very clear that metals are known to them. Okay, so in Ahar, which is a Chalcolithic site in Rajasthan, we come across the process of melting and metallurgy. In Chalcolithic phase, different types of pottery were very prevalent, and the most important one is actually the black and red one. Black and red pottery is actually a very typical feature of Chalcolithic period. Okay, this was actually done on wheel and occasionally painted with white linear designs. You can see the image here. I mean, it's not a colored image, but still, this is supposed to be black and red with white lines. A typical feature of Chalcolithic period, and these are the vessels that we have found from Jorve in the region of Maharashtra. Obviously, domesticated animals was found. Evidence for that was found. The evidence of agriculture is also found. I mean, that started way before Chalcolithic period. So all these things continued and evolved. But generally, they were not acquainted with hoes. Okay, very important here. Generally, they were not acquainted with hoes. Some animal remains are identified as being either of horse or donkey or wild ass. It's not conclusive. We have evidences of some animal remains. It could be that of a horse or that of a donkey or that of a wild ass. Historians are not able to clearly identify which one it is. In Indus Valley civilization also, we will study something similar. Okay, there has been a question a couple of years back in UPSC prelims, and one of the statements said Harappans knew about, or Harappans domesticated horse. Okay, the thing is, we have evidences of horse because the horse bones were found from Surkotada, but there is no evidence of domestication. Both are different. Okay, evidence of domestication is different, and evidence of the bone evidence that we found is different. So we will talk more about that when we study about Indus Valley civilization. But here, understand that we have evidences of some animal. Okay, it could be a horse, could be a wild ass, or a donkey. People certainly ate beef and pork, but they did not eat pork on any considerable scale. So both these things were eaten by people, but pork is not eaten in such abundant levels. They produced wheat and rice, and in addition to these staple crops, they also cultivated bajra. They produced several pulses such as lentil, black gram, green gram, and grass pea. Okay, all these can be found at Navdatoli, situated in the banks of Narmada River in Maharashtra. So cultivation, the art of agriculture started to take a huge leap or huge revolution. I won't call it a revolution, but still it is a huge evolution can be seen in all these things. So here is a map again, which is given in your textbook. You can see the Chalcolithic cultures and the Chalcolithic sites all over India. Okay, based on the different systems, it is classified here. Please look into that and you can identify various sites. Now, cotton was produced in black cotton soil in Deccan. Okay, we already know that the Deccan region, we have the famous Deccan traps. Okay, very volcanic. It was once a volcano, active volcanic region, long time ago. But now we have black soil in the Deccan region. And here there has been evidences of cultivation of crops which are suited for black soil. Okay, such as cotton. Then we have evidence of rye, bajra, several millets, etc., in lower Deccan region. In eastern India, we all along with rice, we also come across certain evidences of fish hooks. Okay, in eastern India, areas like Bihar and West Bengal, we have evidences of rice cultivation. So along with that, we also find some fish hooks from that period, which means people practiced fishing also. So rice and fish, which is very common diet in that region even now, has been so since Chalcolithic period. Clear? So historians, based on their findings, believe that generally these people are not acquainted with burnt bricks. Okay, why? Because most of the houses were actually constructed with wattle and daub and seem to have been thatched houses. You know what a thatched house is, right? Kacha house. Okay, so most of the houses has been thatched house, and so historians believe that they were not well acquainted with burnt bricks. However, people in Ahar lived in stone houses. Ahar is a very important site which is located in Rajasthan. It is a very important site for a lot of reasons, some of which we have already discussed. So here in Ahar, we find evidences that people lived in stone houses, while in most other areas, we find that people lived in thatched houses. Out of around 200 Jorve cultures or Jorve sites that were discovered so far, the largest Jorve site is Daimabad. This is why I said Daimabad is very important. Largest among the Jorve sites is Daimabad, which is located in the Godavari Valley. Daimabad has actually a fortification made of mud, and it is famous for the recovery of many bronze goods, some of which were influenced by Harappan culture. This is why Daimabad is very important. It is the largest of the Jorve sites. It has evidence of fortification. It also has evidences of bronze goods, which means it has been influenced by Harappan civilization. The other important site in Maharashtra, named as Inangavon, here in the earlier Chalcolithic period in the western Maharashtra, large mud houses with ovens and circular pit houses has been discovered. And in the later phase, we have houses with 5 rooms, 4 rectangular and 1 circular. Inamgavon was also fortified and surrounded by a moat. So Inamgavon is also a very important site. Again, situated in Maharashtra. So here we find that there has been evidences of large mud houses. In a later phase, we come across large houses with about 5 rooms. Okay, and out of these 5 rooms, 4 are rectangular and 1 is circular. Very typical feature in Inamgavon region, Inamgavon site, which is a part of the Jorve culture. As far as the tools are all concerned, we have evidences of tools, weapons, and bangles of copper. Okay, now it is not stones anymore. We have evidences of metal. I mean, we already are speaking about a metallic age. Okay, so we have copper bangles, copper tools, copper weapons. We also have manufactured beads of semi-precious stones such as carnelian, steatite, quartz crystal, etc. We also find evidences that the people knew the art of spinning and weaving. Okay, I mean, obviously cotton was cultivated a lot, so people should know the idea of spinning and weaving. Otherwise, cultivation of cotton is a waste, right? So they knew that art of spinning and weaving. Cotton flax and silk threads made of cotton silk and semel silk has been found in Maharashtra. These are obvious. Maharashtra is a region having some black soil. So cotton cultivation there is very obvious point. Inamgavon had potters, smiths, ivory carvers, lime makers, terracotta artisans. Okay, so the lifestyle of people started to become very diverse. Earlier, it was all confined to stone and stone implements. But now, once the first metal has been discovered, things have started to evolve at a much faster pace. Lifestyle has to, started to change very much, diverse very much. There are potters, there are smiths, there are ivory carvers, there are lime makers, terracotta artisans, etc. etc. One other important curious thing in Maharashtra is that we have evidences of people being buried in urns beneath the floor of their house in north to south direction. Okay, in Maharashtra, the dead were buried within their houses in a north to south direction, like this. The dead person is put in a jar, okay, huge jar. It's called an urn, and this entire urn is buried inside your house itself. Okay, there is no separate cemetery or anything, or it's not cremated or anything. It's actually buried within your house in a north-south direction. This is very peculiar about Maharashtra. Clear? Also, in this urn, we also find some pots, some copper objects, etc., etc., which obviously is for the use in their afterlife. Okay, once people are dead, they believed in afterlife and all, so they can use all these things in afterlife. So based on that faith or based on that belief, people also used to put in copper articles and some pots with food content and all along with the dead, and they buried the whole thing together. Terracotta figure of women suggests that Chalcolithic people venerated the mother goddess. So we have evidence of a terracotta figure of a woman. Okay, so historians believe that the Chalcolithic people actually venerated the mother goddess. So this woman figure could be that of a mother goddess. In Malwa region and Rajasthan, stylized bull terracottas show that bull was a symbol of religious cult. Okay, a very typical stylized bull figure is seen in Rajasthan and Malwa region, the central Indian region. So from that, historians believe that bull was also a very much a religious animal at that time. Okay, shows the religious cult in those periods. Both the settlement pattern and burial practices suggest that beginning of social inequalities happened in Chalcolithic society. Okay, so when historians actually buried all these things and when they excavated different sites, they found some differences between various burials and various settlements. Some of the settlements were very large, okay, very huge settlements. Some settlements were very small. Similarly, in some burials, they come across lots of copper articles, very high valued stuffs and all. But in certain other burials, they come across very bare minimum copper articles and very no precious metals or anything. So what does this mean? This means that the first example is that of a very wealthy, very influential personality. And the second is actually the example of a very poor personality, not well enough. Okay, otherwise he could have also buried very costly articles and all. Okay, so clearly there is a difference, or there has been some inequality in the society. So historians mark these burial and the extent of settlement and all, etc., as evidences or as proof that Chalcolithic society had inequalities. Okay, so the marking of inequalities began in Chalcolithic period. A kind of settlement hierarchy is visible in several Jorwe settlements in Maharashtra. So that kind of inequality existed during this period. Now, importance of the Chalcolithic phase. Okay, we are almost finished for today. Only a few more slides. Importance of Chalcolithic phase. People mostly founded rural settlements on river banks not far from hills. I already told you this. Okay, earlier, due to the lack of metals and all, people had to stay in the foothills or close to a river. They could not cut down heavy forests and all. They used microliths and other stone tools supplemented by some copper tools. So copper began to be used during this period, and eventually it became a very prominent metal. They used wheel turned black and red pots, first to use painted pottery. The first people to use painted pottery in Indian history is Chalcolithic people. Okay, they also used wheel-turned black and red pots. Chalcolithic communities founded the first large villages in peninsular India and cultivated far more cereals than were known to the Neolithic men. That is an already established factor. We already studied that. Compared to the previous phases, Chalcolithic people had much more diversity in their agriculture and cultivated much more number of cereals than what was cultivated by their predecessors. In Western India, more animal food was consumed, but fish and rice formed a prominent element in Eastern half. Okay, again, think about it. Bengal, Bihar, etc. Even now, fish is a very staple part of their food. Okay, so in Eastern India, in Eastern Chalcolithic culture, we see that along with rice, fish is the prominent feature. But towards Western part of India, instead of fish, it is actually meat which is used more in that region. Okay, in settlements at Kayatha and Iran in Madhya Pradesh and Inangaon in Western Maharashtra, we see evidences of fortification. We already talked about Inangaon and Daimabad, both were fortified. Similarly, in Kayatha and Iran, both in Madhya Pradesh, we find evidences of fortification. Burial practices were different. In Maharashtra, we already learned that the bodies were buried in north to south direction. But in South India, further south, the bodies were buried in east-west direction. Okay, in Maharashtra, Jorve culture, we find that bodies were buried in north to south direction. But further south, we see that bodies were buried in the east-west direction, not the north-south direction. Clear? Also, in Western India, there was complete extended burial, while in Eastern India, we have fractional burial. Okay, or in the Western part of India, we have complete, pakka, like complete virtually extended burial is practiced in Western part of India, was practiced in Western part of India at that time. And in Eastern part of India, there is only fractional burial. Okay, there is no complete burial as such. So these are the differences between various Chalcolithic cultures or various Chalcolithic sites that existed in different parts of our country. So we now understand what is the significance of Chalcolithic culture. Now, what are its limitations? Okay, there has been plenty of limitations for Chalcolithic people. First of all, they domesticated various kinds of animals, including cattle, sheep, goat, etc. But most of them were actually slaughtered for food, but not used for milk and dairy products. Okay, so tribal people, such as the Gonds of Bastar and all, they believed that milk is meant only to feed young animals, and therefore they did not use milk. So they never milked their cattle. So cattle were used as meat only, for meat purpose only, not for milk products. So this was a drawback. Cattle were not completely utilized. Chalcolithic people living in the black cotton soil in the central and western India did not practice cultivation on any intensive or extensive scale. So as far as this meat and milk product is concerned, it is something similar to the vegan concept. Okay, vegans also believe that you are not supposed to consume milk because it's supposed to be, for their young calf and all. All right, so some kind of similarity can be seen there. Now, as far as this one, Chalcolithic people who lived in the central Indian region, the Deccan region is concerned, we find that there has not been much of an extensive or intensive cultivation. Why? Because black soil is very typical. Okay, it is not easy to plow through the black soil. Black soil is a bit sticky. Okay, so your normal wood implements are not enough to dig through the black soil. Same goes for certain areas in other parts of the country having red soil. Red soil is also very much, they have very, various kinds of nutrients which makes it sticky. Okay, and it is not easy to dig through or plow through red soil either. So in these regions, we find that there is extensive cultivation is not yet practiced. Why? Because iron implements are not so common even at this period. They knew iron, but extensive use of iron has not started yet. All right. So neither hoe nor plow has been found in Chalcolithic sites. Perforated stone discs alone were tied as weight to the digging sticks, which could be used in slash and burn or jump cultivation. It was possible to saw in the ashes with the aid of such digging sticks. Yeah, using wooden implements, it is easy to dig through ashes. Okay, ash doesn't settle down very thickly. You can actually plow through the ashes using these kinds of light materials. So we come across such implements in these regions, but we do not come across heavy iron materials or anything, which means that there is no way people could have cultivated in such black soil or red soil region. Okay, now burial of a large number of children was found in western Maharashtra. So from this we can understand that infant mortality rate was very high. So probably the reason is lack of nutrition, absence of medical knowledge, outbreaks of epidemics. If anything could have been there. Okay, we do not know for sure what it is, but historians believe that since a lot of children died and were buried in Maharashtra, there is a possibility that there was a lack of nutrition, or say absence of proper medical knowledge, or maybe outbreaks of pandemics may have happened, something like that. People were unaware about the art of mixing tin with copper. We only come across very few articles of bronze from here. Okay, from that we can understand. I mean, copper is common in all these sites. So, but then we find only less number of bronze. So from that we can understand that the main item which is needed to convert copper into bronze, that is tin, is lacking. Okay, so tin was very much lacking in most of these sites. Otherwise, they could have easily converted copper into bronze, which is much more, stronger and useful material. They did not know the art of writing. Okay, if they knew the art of writing, then they would be a civilization. So they did not know the art how to write. Nor did they live in cities as did the people in Bronze Age. Okay, essentially, Chalcolithic society was rural. It is not urban. Harappan society is a Bronze Age society. It is urban. Okay, they knew how to write, although it is pictographic script. All right. Although most Chalcolithic cultures existing in major part of India were younger than Indus Valley civilization, they did not derive any substantial benefit from the advanced technological knowledge of Indus Valley people. This is what I mentioned at the beginning. Most of these Chalcolithic sites is actually younger than Indus Valley, which means it came after Indus Valley. So, usually if such a culture arises after a very prominent culture, then they should have, a better level of understanding about technology, etc., etc., right? But unfortunately, most of the Chalcolithic period, despite being younger than Indus Valley civilization, is far inferior to the level of advancement the Indus Valley civilization achieved. Okay, now, final topic, the Copper Age in India. All right. So the largest copper hoards, okay, I mean, we come across various excavations in different parts of the country, and the area where we find the largest amount or the largest hoard of copper is in Gungaria in Madhya Pradesh. And we find many copper utensils that is not only meant for fishing, hunting, and fighting, but also used for artisanal and agricultural use. So all these activities were very prevalent in Chalcolithic period. Ochre colored pottery sites has been found in upper portion of the Doab and many copper cells in Khetri zone of Rajasthan. So Khetri copper mines in Rajasthan is very famous. We already talked about that yesterday in the previous class. So we come across ochre colored pottery. Okay, ochre is something like a dark yellow color. So ochre colored pottery has been found in the upper portion of the Doab, and many copper cells is found in Khetri region of Rajasthan. But it appears, however, that at no place did these settlements last over a few centuries or last over a century. They were neither large nor spread over wide territory. This is very interesting thing. Okay, these cultures existed here and there in various sites in India, but there is no evidence of it lasting for a very long time. Also, there is no evidence that these sites expanded to any considerable amount. All these sites that we have found are only a few hectares or maybe a few acres. That's it. Not more than that. There is no evidence that they enhanced into a city or something big. Okay, that is very curious. What may have been the reasons for that? Okay, I mean, you can, I think from all the above discussions that we have made in this class so far, you could guess why the Chalcolithic people failed to expand into a larger city, or why they failed in continuing for more than a century or whatever. Anyway, why and how of these settlements came to an end is not clear. We are not sure about it. Okay, what caused the decline of Chalcolithic period, or how did this Chalcolithic period come to an end? These are not so clear to historians and archaeologists. A suggestion has been made that inundation followed by waterlogging in an extensive area have made the area unfit for human settlements. This could be the reason. I told you climate played a very important role in Indian history. Okay, so due to the climatic factors, due to heavy rains and all, maybe inundation has happened at a huge scale, and waterlogging may have happened in most of these sites. And this could have forced these people to, migrate to a different region or shift to a different settlement. Okay, which could have made it, such waterlogging could have made human settlement impossible in these regions. But anyway, ochre colored pottery may have been the junior contemporaries of the Harappans, and their area was not far removed from that of Harappa. We may therefore expect some give and take between the OCP people and the bronze using Harappa. Sorry. Okay, so we find a lot of such settlements of Chalcolithic people in and around the Harappan region also. We also see that there has been some give and takes. For example, we have clearly established that Daimabad may have been influenced by Harappans. We also find some bronze metals in certain Chalcolithic sites. So from all this, it is guessable that there has been some influence of Harappan society or Indus Valley civilization in the Chalcolithic society. Clear? However, it is not that much extended or anything. Or I mean, Chalcolithic period is clearly inferior to Harappan society. But historians believe that there has been some amount of give and take, not in a large scale, but in some minor scales. Okay, so no activity or no culture in history is isolated from everything else. Everything is interconnected at some levels. Maybe minor connection, maybe there is a major connection. Okay, so here we come to the end of this session. So today we looked into two prominent chapters. One is the Stone Age and the other is Chalcolithic period, or the Copper Stone Age. I mean, today's lesson has been a bit dry. I know that there is nothing interesting that we studied today. Most of the things that we learned today were, to the point things, one word things and all. Very dry topic. But I think now you have an idea, or a very rough idea, at least a very vague idea about a pretext in which Harappan society or the Indus Valley civilization is going to come up. Okay, so all these advancements that human beings made in this period eventually culminated in what is the Indus Valley civilization. Clear? So we will study about Indus Valley civilization and Aryans also in the next class. How the Indus Valley civilization emerged, its major phase, its collapse, and the arrival of Aryans. Okay, so any questions? Is IVC a transition from Chalcolithic, or can we find? It is not. No. It is not a transition from Chalcolithic. I already told you that. Chalcolithic period came after IVC. Okay, I mean, bronze obviously was the first metal that was found. Oh, it is more of a contemporary than a predecessor. Most of the Chalcolithic sites are younger than IVC, which means IVC happened first. Clear? But contemporary to IVC, some Chalcolithic sites also existed in different parts of India. For best example, Daimabad and Jorve culture, etc., etc. Okay, so it is a very rough say time scale. Okay, after Neolithic period, we find that the next important period is Chalcolithic period. Some Chalcolithic cultures are very old. Some are very coexistence with IVC. And then after IVC decline, then also we find the emergence of some Chalcolithic period, Chalcolithic sites. The thing is, Even then, even though some of these Chalcolithic sites came after the collapse of IVC, still they were not even close to the level of advancement that IVC achieved. That is very curious. I mean, if a superior civilization existed before you, then you should be even further ahead in development. But unfortunately, most of the Chalcolithic sites that came even after IVC is comparatively inferior to IVC. Okay, so that is it for today, guys. Thank you for joining. Please make sure to like this video, share, and subscribe. So in the next class, we will start Harappa and Aryans and all, and things will get more interesting. So thank you for joining me today. Until next class, see you. Bye bye.